lobby. Let's all go to the lobby, lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Hello, horror hounds, and welcome to Now Slaying, an It Slays podcast production where we break down the latest and greatest in the world of horror. I'm your not-so-humble host, Colton.
I'm Rowan.
And today on the show, we're going to be discussing Sinners, which was released April 18th, 2025, exclusively in theaters. Now, Rowan, Sinners is easily the biggest horror release of the year so far, and may wind up being the biggest horror release of the year, period. So I think it's safe to say we were both looking forward to this one. But Ryan Coogler isn't a filmmaker we've often got to discuss on the show, considering he's known for doing some franchise sports dramas, a couple very successful Marvel movies. So I want to know, are you a fan of Ryan Coogler, and were you interested in seeing his foray into the horror genre?
Yeah, I mean, I was super excited for this. I think you and me both were just like,
yeah.
I remember like seeing the trailer and I was like, yeah, like just take my money. I'll pay extra to go see it.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a pretty big Coogler fan. I was going to say a hot take, but I don't really think it's a hot take that I think Creed is better than maybe any of the Rocky movies. Now, I don't know.
I've only seen a couple. I've only seen a couple of the Rocky movies, and it was more so the later ones. Like, I haven't actually seen Rocky 1 and 2. I've seen, like, Rocky 5 and Rocky Balboa or whatever. But, I mean,
they're great, like, you know, for, like, these kind of, like, you know, serialized franchise sports movies. I just think Creed, like, brought it up to a level that you didn't really think that franchise could go in terms of depth and stuff. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, Black Panther, I think I've said plenty of times, I think you and me might have said before, like, you know, I liked Black Panther. I don't think I was as hype about it as everyone else was. But, you know, I could see what the hype was and the importance of it. And then, of course, Wakanda Forever, I was a little less pumped about. But, I mean, that's something that I don't really take as Coogler's fault. I mean, when you have your, like, star die that your entire movie is based around,
it's a very difficult pivot to make, for sure.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Saying, you know, speaking lightly.
Yeah. I've never seen, is it Strange Fruit was his first one with Michael B. Jordan? Oh my
God, dude, it's Fruitvale Station.
Fruitvale, I don't know. Strange Fruit.
Yeah.
It's something that do with fruit. Yeah, I haven't seen that. I've only heard, like, good things about it. But yeah, I mean, I would take myself as a Coogler fan, and I, you know, just super excited about this. What about you?
Yeah, I have been following him since Fruitvale Station. I thought that's a good little movie. That was, I think, his thesis movie coming out of, like, the USC film program. And I'm a huge fan of Creed 1 and 2 in particular. I think those are just great movies. Creed 3, you know, it's not directed by him anyways, but, you know, kind of like building on, you know, what he set up. So I didn't enjoy that one quite as much. And yeah, the Black Panther movies, you know, they are what they are. They're not my favorite, but I can understand, like, that they're important culturally, and that obviously Michael B. Jordan as Killmonger is just still excellent.
Yeah.
In the first Black Panther. This one, yeah, I was looking forward to it. I think the trailer is absolutely awesome. The slow-mo shot of Michael B. Jordan with the Tommy gun is just, like, such a good way to end it off. Yeah, I was looking forward to seeing Michael B. Jordan playing two roles. I'm a fan of Haley Steinfeld ever since, you know, True Grit, and then Edge of 17, and then, you know, Hawkeye, or whatever, you know, basically whatever she pops up in, I think she's pretty solid.
Bumblebee, man, all about the Bumblebee.
You know what? Bumblebee wasn't bad either. So yeah, this one, as we've gotten closer to release, the critical acclaim for it has been basically impossible to ignore. I think for the past week, it's been sitting at 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. I have seen nothing but at least 4.5, 5-star reviews even from this movie, just universally on Letterboxd. So yeah, I've been looking forward to this. This is a big original movie, and of course I was rooting for it to be excellent and very excited to get in the theater. So is it a sin not to check this one out in theaters? Well, before we get into that, let's throw it on over to the trailer.
I've been all over this world. I ain't ever seen no demons, no ghosts, no magic. Till now.
Admit to it.
Admit to what?
That you dead.
Sinners, only in theaters, coming soon.
Sinners was written and directed by Ryan Coogler, and the story is as follows. Trying to leave their troubled lives behind, twin brothers return to their hometown to start again, only to discover that an even greater evil is waiting to welcome them back. Now, here on Now Slang, we like to keep things relatively spoiler-free up front before getting into the more in-depth spoiler-filled discussion. And Rowan, usually I let you kick off our spoiler-free discussion.
Oh, I like when you interrupt. And
Yeah, this time I kind of wanted to shake things up a little bit, and I just wanted to start off with simply just kind of laying the groundwork that movies like this are why I enjoy Now Slang, because we get to get together and discuss an exciting new movie that's currently in theaters. And despite all of the hype and the glowing critical reception surrounding this one, I wanted to start off with applauding Ryan Coogler for making a $100 million horror movie with a predominantly black cast and executing what I can only describe as a singular vision. This movie wasn't what I exactly thought it was going to be, but as I was watching, I felt like it was exactly what he wanted to make. And it doesn't feel like something that the studio kind of sanded the edges off it to make it more commercial. It takes its time with some very deliberate pacing and a lengthy runtime. And it even gets a little weird or transcendental at times, which may isolate some audience members. But despite all of that, I'm just happy to see what feels like a director's original vision come to life in service of a truly creative piece of art. Now, I don't know if that piece of art always worked for me, but I'm excited to hash it out with you over the next hour or so and just get our thoughts. So, Rowan, how about you kick it off? What are your spoiler-free thoughts on Sinners?
well, I can't believe you just blew past this. I rewind this back a little bit.
Oh, no. Theater talk, or?
I just gotta let you know, I'm sitting in the theater. They're playing the commercials, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then there's a black screen. And then I hear the voice of Marlon Wayans. And just
Oh, God.
just to let you know, they played, I don't know if this is in every theater, but they did play the trailer for him at the beginning of this.
I saw it in IMAX before my
Yeah.
screening last night as well.
And I just want you to know that was one of many "let's fucking goes" that came out of my mouth. I've never been so excited. I don't know. I didn't know if there was anywhere else I was going to say that until it comes out, and I'm just so excited.
You just got to let it out.
I just got to let it out. I'm so excited. But yeah, I don't know. I think my overall topic point is just let's fucking go. I was so bought into this, like the minute it came. It looks gorgeous. The cinematography is like just perfection. I was trying to put my finger on it, like a vampire movie like this, and I can't really think of one, like the time period and kind of the setting. And I was just like, it's like a truly, like you said, it's just a truly original idea with obviously conversations that Coogler wants to have, but does it in the best way. It really gave me those shades of like Get Out, where you can watch this as a straight up vampire flick and just have a good time, or you can just like dig through the layers of what he's actually talking about. And it's just like, there's like so much meat on the bone of this that I had a really great time. And as someone who, like comes from a musical background and is very music based, like I was very interested in these overarching themes of music.
There was a scene in this that we won't get to in the spoiler-free discussion, but it was the sort of thing, as I was watching it, I was like, Rowan's going to give this 5 stars just for this scene alone. I was like, there's no way we get out of this discussion without Rowan probably slaying this movie purely just for this one scene.
I know what scene you're talking about, and yeah, we'll wait, and I won't spoil anything. But and I think, in a spoiler-free section, it's interesting, because if you're listening to this and you haven't seen it, I think one thing that wasn't marketed about this is like, this really is a movie about the blues, like 100%. And like the creation of not just the blues, but like the modern blues, which is like a genre I'm very interested in. And I'm going to wait for like all the like, oh my God, this is what he's talking about, until the spoiler section. Because like there's important things to do with the date, where this is set, who these characters are actually based off of. Yeah. But yeah, like.
But it's a very musical movie. It's a lot more musical than probably most people would expect getting into it. There's probably half a dozen musical performances in this movie that it almost verges on the territory of being a musical, but specifically that the characters themselves aren't really bursting out in the song and dance. It's just a lot of musical performances, almost like a concert film at like small little portions of it.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, in theory, I should hate it, but I just definitely don't. I thought the cast was super. It was like every single person in this. I wasn't like, man, I kind of wish it was this person, or like I wish they had a recount. Like everyone was just like I was saluting it. We got our boy, Mr. Eden Lake, Jack O'Connell, as the lead vampire. Obviously the minute I saw him, I just memories flooding back of Eden Lake. I'm like, those fucking teenagers, man. Those fucking teenagers. Which he's fantastic in this. Like,
he is.
So good. Haley Steinfeld.
Yeah.
Really, really good. I thought she was like the standout in this. I mean, next to Michael B. Jordan, who I was not like sold on. I was like, oh, he's playing these like twins. How's this gonna look? Be like in the shots, and like how is he gonna play them? All this stuff, and I'm here to report, like, why would I doubt it? Like, kills it, and I thought it was interesting because I think one thing most actors would do is make these like twin brothers so different that it's
which for me, this was actually like an aspect that made me dislike kind of him playing both characters, is that these characters are very similar. There's like a very slight difference between them, and oftentimes you wouldn't even know which character he's playing other than what wearing or what colors are associated with them.
Yeah, and see, this is what I liked, because I was like, well, this makes more sense as like actual brothers. Like these guys were like raised the same, they're in the same situation. Like they would have so much of the same thing going on, and especially where they're so
both
close.
Especially having exact backgrounds of going to war, or being like I don't want to get into all the details, but basically being gangsters to a sort of degree, and like always working together more or less.
And then the other thing that really
you're skipping over the biggest cast member of this, though, in my opinion. I think Miles Catton, I'm not sure exactly how to say his name. I'm not even sure if he's in much other than this movie, but he is Sammy.
This is it.
This is it? Okay, so this is his debut.
Introducing his letterbox. This is the only movie.
Okay, all right. Well, this guy, in my opinion, was the star of the show. He's Sammy. He's Preacher Boy. He's kind of like the audience surrogate for a lot of this, as he's being reintroduced to his cousins as they come back to town. He has a lot of musical performances. He has probably the deepest voice I've ever heard on screen, or at least in a decade. And dude, his performances in the movie, like, musically, but also just like dramatically what he has to do, I thought he was by far the standout, in my opinion. He was just so strong. And also like Delroy Lindo, he plays kind of like an old drunkard.
If you cast Delroy Lindo in your movie, I'm just like, Get Shorty, Malcolm X are like two very important movies to me in my entire life. I love Delroy Lindo.
I think the thing is we could basically go through the entire cast. It's just Miles I thought was exceptional.
Standout.
And then Delroy, for me, like as I was watching it, he was so committed to the character that I probably didn't even understand what he was saying, probably, I don't know, 30% of the time, because he was slurring his words so much and had such a heavy accent and, just kind of some of the turns of phrase. But it was just an astounding cast altogether. And it's funny that you thought Michael B. Jordan was very good, because this is crazy to say, because obviously he's an excellent actor. I thought he was the weakest part of the entire cast. Don't get me wrong, he's still really good in the movie, but it's just
I don't know if I'd argue with that. I think the cast is that strong. It's just
it's like what I've seen him do as Killmonger, or what I've seen him do as Adonis Creed, is just like on a kind of, in my opinion, on a different level than what he's doing here. These are a little bit more somber or more subdued characters that he's playing, I would say, for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I feel like, just as you said, we could literally just go through the cast list. It's like, let me just read the letterbox of all the casts, and I'll be like, oh, they did a great job. Like, real great job. Yeah, and then, I mean, honestly, I think, like, the main thing I want to say in this section is just, like, the music is really good. Like, the music is catchy. The way
oh my god, we haven't talked about the literal score
by
Ludwig Göransson, which is, in my opinion, the single most strongest part of the movie just throughout. Like, consistently excellent, even if it's being fucking weird, which it is at times. But I think just like his work that he's doing here is, I don't know, dude. This is like another like Oscar-worthy score. I don't know, based on the sort of movie it is, I don't know if it'll get that sort of, discussion in a year's time. But this was incredible. I don't often notice scores in movies. It's impossible to ignore this one. It's way too like prevalent, but also like perfectly kind of selling the vibe of each scene, even when sometimes I think tonally the movie might be a little bit confused or mismatched at times. I think the score just always is consistent throughout. Sorry, keep going on about the music.
I mean, you're making the case for it. The score is so good, and the way it intertwines with like the actual like music being played and everything is just like so good. I'm just like, I don't know. Like, do you think like Ludwig walks in a room and like, does Hans Zimmer like tremble a little bit? Maybe
he's getting to that level, dude. The last couple of scores that Ludwig Göransson has done have been like all timers, and obviously Hans Zimmer has loads in his his catalog, as does John Williams. These are greats that have been working for 30, 40, 50 years, some of them. This dude he's coming up and coming fast. Like, it's just, a lot of these scores are just, they're like already all-timers for me, at least.
Yeah, like I'm literally looking like, you have this, Oppenheimer.
Yeah.
Tenet, which I know you're not a big Tenet movie guy. I love Tenet, but the score in Tenet is like incredible. Yeah, I'm just like, this guy. Like, now, it's not many times that I'm like, I have to keep an eye on the composer of this movie, of like what he's doing. But it's just, I think, I'm trying to bring it back to the movie now. Let me stop talking about music. I'm sure
I'm scrolling through his filmography here as well. I'm like, I can just instantly think of so many of these scores as well. Even like Mandalorian is just like, it has such an iconic theme song and score to it, even though I'm not a huge Star Wars guy.
But let me bring it back. I know people listening are like, this is a goddamn movie podcast, guys. Anyway, I think so much of this was A, refreshing, and B, like almost old school. I don't know how to describe it. Traditional, but like in the best kind of ways. Like this, obviously I think people are going to look and be like, holy, this is like 2.5 hour long movie. But there's such good like world building in this, character introduction that doesn't seem bloated. Like, to me, by the time we get to like the horror stuff, the vampire stuff, I was kind of cool where I was like, man, I was having fun just this being almost a normal movie.
So we're in complete agreement here, where I think I prefer the first hour and 15 minutes of this movie, where it's a very deliberate pace is what I say, which a lot of people are like, oh, that's another word for slow. And yeah, sure, if you're not enjoying what the filmmaker is presenting to you, maybe it is slow, but I just thought the character development here was excellent. Like, I felt like I knew all of these characters by the time we got to kind of like where they're going at the end of the day, because this movie takes place over the course of one day, one night, essentially. And I just kind of loved getting to know these characters, getting to know their lived experiences, their lives, and like kind of just languishing in like the Mississippi sun for the day. I thought it was just so great going along with these characters as they're just trying to basically go to a juke joint or build up a juke joint. And once we got to the horror, it's interesting because I think once the horror elements start getting introduced, the movie starts to, when I say lose me is a little bit too strong of a word, but basically I liked it, I think, when it wasn't a horror movie a little bit more than when it was. And as the horror becomes more prevalent, especially once you get to the third act, some of those elements didn't really work for me in the way they were kind of conveyed on screen, where I was kind of yearning for the first hour of the movie, where I felt like I was in such capable hands of the filmmaker, setting everything up perfectly. And essentially what he was setting up didn't wind up playing out exactly like what I expected to be, which we'll get into the spoiler discussion after the fact. But yeah, I just really enjoyed the first hour of this movie as well, where it was essentially a straightforward period drama, more or less.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely see that. The horror elements, I think, kind of worked probably more for me than you. I actually enjoyed the horror elements, like in the later acts. I mean, I think this is also a movie that wears its influences pretty heavy on its sleeves. There's like some total recreations of what I would say are like iconic horror movies or iconic vampire movies. So this is like one of those things where one thing I always kind of hate deep down is a director that isn't necessarily a horror director that dips their toes in, but like just doesn't really have like an appreciation, for the genre.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Where this, I'm like, yeah. Like, there was stuff I saw in this that I was like, there's no way. Like, you would have to be hardcore horror guy, like, to be referencing what I think you're referencing. So, more power to Coogler. More power to Coogler.
What do you think of some of the effects in here? So, essentially, I'm kind of pointing out there was some practicals in terms of the colors of the blood. Did you like this orangish blood that was in this movie? What do you think of the glowing eyes that the vampires had every now and then that seemed to be sometimes contacts, but a lot of it to me did feel like digital added, especially where they were all like different colors and different shapes and shines. These were the sort of small things as I was watching the movie that were kind of clashing with the realism that Coogler created so much kind of in every other facet of the movie. That, like, once again, these are, like, small elements, but I was kind of like, I don't know if I really like that or not.
I actually did like the glowing eyes. Now, I didn't like it all the time. I liked it when it was kept simple, and it was red, and it's just kind of, it's like that iconic, just like any kind of old horror movie, like, the evil, it has red eyes, like, or these red dots for eyes, and I thought that worked, and I thought, oh, this is, like, kind of simplistic, but like you said, there were scenes where, like, you were almost seeing, like, like skyline or clouds, like their eyes would kind of do weird colors and stuff, where I'm like, oh, I think I would have rather, just kept like the red eyes or something. I did like a lot of the practical effects in this. I thought the practical was pretty good. Honestly, the blood, I didn't notice.
You didn't notice the different tinge. Okay.
I was having too much fun, I think. That's what was going on.
Yeah, there's a part in this movie where essentially it's almost, in my opinion, impossible to ignore because there is just so much blood at a certain point without spoiling the specifics. But it was just a little bit much for me. The only other thing I can kind of point to, which once again, this might not be something that everyone notices just because if you're so invested in the world or if you don't pick it up at any point, you might not notice. But this is something that I thought the lighting overall in the movie was a little distracting. And this, I got a bunch of examples, so I'm just going to point them out in a spoiler-free manner. That obviously this movie takes place over the course of one day, one night. So sometimes it's so dark in broad daylight that you can barely see their faces at all when they're talking. Sometimes it's lit like a traditional movie where you can see all the details of every single face, basically no shadows on it, even though they're at night in a dark room with no like lighting in the room. Sometimes it's out. It's nighttime outside. It's pitch black. You can't see the tree line. You can't see the cars in the parking lot. You can't see anything. It's dark and almost lit like a traditional or a more modern movie where basically people complain about it being so dark. Sometimes it's lit like it's a Spielberg night where it's like all blue and lit up. There was just stuff when I was watching the movie where it was just a noticeable shift in the lighting. There was even a couple of scenes, and this is like obviously to a much smaller amount, but you'd have a dialogue scene where it's shot reverse shot cutting back and forth. And then someone would reach for something in their pocket or reach for something in the scene. And the lighting when they insert that shot in would be completely different than the shot reverse shot. And almost like so dark that I could barely even see whatever they were grabbing. They're not things that outright ruin a movie, obviously. But when you start to notice them, it's something that I kind of had to just accept and ignore. And in a movie of this scale, like as we said, like $100 million movie, and obviously with the rest of the craft being so well done, it was weird for me to notice lighting issues in a movie of this size. I don't know. Maybe you never noticed any of that stuff. But for me, it was just a little bit, I was wondering why some of it was lit the way it was, I guess.
I didn't care. I didn't notice it. But that's why you're on the podcast. You wouldn't be Colton unless you notice these details. It's, which, like, I'm sure, like I said, a pleb like me, I had no idea, but now, I'll say this, like, I kind of want to go see it again, so now I can look out for these things and then kind of really pick it apart.
Yeah, and the last thing I'll say is you've already touched on your theater experience. For me, I have to point this out just because the theater wasn't very full. It was the first IMAX screening here, but just before the movie started, a group of, like, 20 I would say 18-year-old boys walked in and they sat in the row directly in front of me.
Oh, good time.
And as they sat there, I leaned over to my friend and I was just kind of like, oh, we might have to get up and move. Like, I can't, like, subject myself to this. Like, they're going to be on their phones. They're going to be making a ruckus. They're going to be loud. And I've also heard that the first hour of this movie might be a little bit boring. So they're just not going to be invested at all. I shit you not. They may have pulled out their phones once or twice, like one or two of them, to check the time really quick. Other than that, completely into this movie. They were not disruptive whatsoever. And it kind of warmed my heart to see, like, the younger generation coming out in droves for this original horror movie. I have no idea what dragged them to the theater, but they were respectful the whole time. So we complain so often on the podcast about terrible audiences, and especially, like, of the younger generation. They were completely invested in this. So I don't know if that's a testament to the movie or I happened to be in the theater with 20 18-year-old film fans, but I just have to point that they seem to love it.
That's where you should yourself let out a little "let's fucking go."
Absolutely. So Rowan, you recommending people check this one out in theaters?
Yeah, I definitely recommend it. So I didn't get to see this in IMAX. I saw this at my theater, and I'll tell you right now, I was like, I should have saw this in IMAX.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you are...
There's aspect ratio shifts. The music is so good. You definitely should have made the pilgrimage to see this one in
which
IMAX,
I may still do, but I definitely recommend this. This is like what we talk about, what we're like pining for is like an original horror movie that isn't necessarily like, sometimes, we're getting an original horror movie by Blumhouse that we're just going into knowing that we're like, dear Lord, we're going to have to talk about this. And this is going to be a real great time. And this is like, this is like an event. This is, I can't even describe, like, I was trying to think what's the last movie I saw that I kind of like felt, not after, but like while watching it. And I mean, this is big shoes to fill, but I think the last movie I was like kind of this buzzing while watching it was Oppenheimer, where I was just like, this is like a spectacle, and this is like what you go to the movies for. So I will highly recommend that you go see this in the theater. What about yourself, Colton?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Check this out in theaters. Rowan said event. And it does feel like an event, despite not being, the 20th Marvel movie or, the 5th Jurassic World movie or whatever, what have you. It's big and it should be experienced on the large screen. This movie, when I was there and when I left, it reminded me of Nope, where I was there. I was like, how the hell did Jordan Peele get this movie made? It's such a larger budget. It was so weird. It dipped its toe into all these different genres, and even though I think Nope, for me, was just a little bit more successful in that regard, this still felt like it was so creative. It was so singular. I don't know of another filmmaker that could have made a movie like this. Maybe Jordan Peele, I guess. But, like, once again, we're talking about two people out of the history of cinema. So, yeah, definitely check this one out in theaters. I think it's well worth your time. And we should just be supporting kind of these big $100 million movies that are actually, like, creator-led and creator-made. And it's not just... I love Jurassic World, but like the only other movie Jurassic Park, the only other movie this year that might even dip its toe in the horror genre of this size is like a Jurassic World Rebirth, which is the 4th movie of the Jurassic World franchise and like the 7th Jurassic Park movie or something, right? Like, it's incredible that Ryan Coogler managed to get this movie made at all. So, yeah, if you're listening to this podcast and you're on the fence for some reason about going to the theater to see this, I don't know what you're doing. You should go see it. Regardless, it'd be crazy that you'd make it this far and be, undecided about checking this out. So we're both recommending that you check this one out in theater, so get off the couch and go check it out as soon as you can. And with that, I think it's time to cut to the spoiler discussion for Sinners. We are now in our spoiler discussion for Sinners, so if you've not seen Sinners, it's time to tune out and come back once you've seen the movie, or keep listening if you simply don't care. Rowan, we kind of hinted at a number of different things in the spoiler-free section that I'm sure we'll get into, but maybe the music? Is that, like, should we start with kind of what I feel like a lot of people are going to say is the scene from the movie?
Let's talk about it. Yeah, so I mean, there's this, you're the technical guy. So other than like the effects and stuff, do you think this is all one shot done, or it's supposed to look like a one shot? Essentially,
it's supposed to look like a oneer, but I kind of feel at this complexity and how many like visual effects are already in the shot, I feel like there's a lot of digital stitching and whatnot. Either way, it's blocked very impressively, and there's a lot going on. So even if I would assume it's largely done digital, it's still one of these kind of like all-timer sequences. This is going to be in people's end of the year 2025 in film videos 100%. It's just this celebratory moment that kind of kicks off when the character of Sammy, or Preacher Boy, is playing for this juke joint, his original piece of music up on, in front of everybody, and it kind of transcends the boundaries of, good and evil, but also like time with how good this piece of art is. And this is a concept that's set up in kind of the opening narration of the movie. But what they do here is like pretty incredible, I would assume, because someone who like this is like foreign territory for me, that a lot of the pieces of music, and I am sure like groups in which they were referencing when this piece of music kind of transcends time, I don't have like correlations to, because I've just never listened to this sort of music, or I wasn't brought up on this sort of music. But as I was watching it, it felt like a joyous celebration of sort of art throughout time, but also a lot of black made art throughout time. And then there was also some other cultures like dipping in, but largely it seemed like a celebratory experience of kind of like black culture, black music for the most part. Yeah,
because like you said, they kind of set up in the beginning of like, there's always like one special kind of like musician or orator that, throughout these cultures that can kind of put everyone in a trance and resonate. And it makes this connection because, obviously like Southern blues is like kind of, considered like this real hot spring of not just like black American music, even into the contemporary, but American music in general, just like all stemming from this. And it's basically that connection of not only do we get to see, like break dancers and MCs and stuff, but we even connect it back to like the roots in Africa and how the blues is directly involved in that, and also involved in like, church music. And like you said, it basically connects, and all the kind of ancestors are, he's unlocking this power from all the ancestors, and everyone's enjoying themselves. Everyone's having a good time. And then obviously what my favorite part about it is that, it also like unlocks the horror, because like you said, it transcends the good and evil. And our vampire, this is what he's trying to do. He's trying to use Preacher Boy and, use it to kind of call his ancestors. And this is where, like, just the layers, the ingenious layers of Ryan Coogler go in, because, I was thinking about it when I was in the theater, that there's no way that he wasn't thinking about Robert Johnson, who is like, if you watch any documentary about like blues, rock music, like, Robert Johnson is like the original, like that's who they base all American contemporary music through. Robert Johnson, which this is set in the exact same year that they claim that happened. Robert Johnson is the infamous story that anyone that's in music, or not just in general, like most people's parents would probably know the story. Robert Johnson's the guy that met the devil at the crossroads and sold his soul to the devil to be able to play the best music, be the best musician ever. And that was the story of why Robert Johnson was so good and how he like transcended cultures and race and everything, and everyone stole from him and he paid that sacrifice to have that. So, and if you look at pictures of Robert Johnson, he looks like Preacher Boy. Like there's no way these connections aren't made. And obviously, you know, this is set in like the Mississippi Delta, which the Mississippi Delta is the area that this happened, which was like a kind of this like cultural pot, because there was like American Asian people living there in that time. Like there was black people, there was white people, like there were so many cultures mixing in that area that like the musical influences are just like super steeped in there. And like I said, I thought that's what was kind of cool about it, was tying that in, all that information that's kind of under there if you want to look it up or if you're interested in it, but making that all related to the vampires and what the vampires kind of want.
Yeah, it's interesting because for me, I didn't know the story of Robert Johnson, or like I've heard of that part of it, like, you know, selling your soul to the devil to be great and having at the crossroads. I heard about that, but I don't know if you would have said the name Robert Johnson, I would have known.
Yeah.
But when I was watching this scene, for me, like kind of what I was taking away was basically as they're celebrating in this moment, like this joyous occasion, having this music, this art that's kind of reaching across time. It's so impossible to kind of ignore just like how much of a celebration this is. All of the walls of the juke joint break down. It's radiating everywhere, like outside of the joint. And when people, and lots of times when people in safe spaces are having this sort of celebration or are living their lives this joyously, there always has to be detractors or people that kind of attack this sort of ideology or attack these sorts of people, especially if they're different than them. And it's something that we've seen throughout history. And the fact that the movie basically has these three white folk vampires out in the woods waiting for this to happen, and as soon as it kind of erupts, that they're there to basically immediately tear it down and kind of become unwelcome people in this space, I thought was very apparent, obviously, but still like emotionally moving to me on like a metaphorical level when I was watching the movie. That, yeah, I mean, some of it's not even metaphorical, it's literally what you're seeing on screen. But I just thought that it was very well done, and as I already said, like the technicals of this sequence is incredible, and in some regards feels like kind of at odds with the horror movie as well. But like this is kind of the moment in the movie where the movie that you were watching for probably the first hour and a half is now very much veering into its horror territory from kind of here on out. This is like the big midpoint of the movie that like kind of explodes off the screen.
Well, and like you said, these walls are like on fire, they're disintegrating, and it really is that, you know, that disintegration of like of that safe space. Like now we're the walls are gone, we're into the horror. I also thought it was very interesting. Remick, who is Jack O'Connell, the kind of the leader of this vampire gang. You know, like I said, you're getting the music nerd in me now. These are the university classes. Is like, obviously, you know, he's Irish in this, and I don't think that's just a random kind of, you know, like, oh, let's make him Irish because, you know, that maybe it was weird and different. But like, obviously, we also get like a giant Irish jig. Like the vampires do this Irish jig, which I think is interesting because obviously, you know, we talk about Michael B. Jordan playing, you know, these twins, and there's a lot of stuff about duality in this, good and evil, obviously, when you have a vampire movie. And I think it's interesting because I feel like Coogler's working with a duality, because in this time in America, Irish people would pretty much be on the same level as black people. Like they were treated, you know, being Irish was just as bad as being black to white people in America, like natural born white people. And so I think it was interesting that you have kind of this good and evil, and, you know, they have these different musics, these different celebrations, but there's also a commonality to them both, which we get many speeches about from the vampires about, like, this is why you need to join us. Like, we need to combine to fight to fight the living. Like, the living are making, that's the real hell on earth. Like, so come join us so we can fight back. Like I said, this is like, to me, on Get Out levels of it's just like these onion layers that you can peel back. And then, like I said, if you don't want to know any of this, you can just, like, you know, the vampire scene of them dancing the Irish jig is fun also. Like, it's just like...
Yeah, it's strange. Like, when I came into this movie, obviously, I did not expect a vampiric Irish jig led by Jack O'Connell from Eden Lake. But it is a kind of an alluring sequence. Are we supposed to think that the Irish jig music is bad? Do you think in the movie? Like, are we supposed to basically be thinking that this music is garbage compared to the blues that they're playing inside? Or is it just a difference? Like, based off of what you were hearing.
I think it's a difference, but I think it's also a commonality. It's like oppressed people in the music of this. And don't even get me started on our clan member, who is a part of the original trio, that is Peter Dramanis, who is one of my all-time favorite bands, July Talk. He is the lead singer of July Talk. They're like a very iconic Canadian band. You know, his claim to fame was, I can't remember, maybe I'd feel like it's not True Blood, but he did like some HBO theme song. He's got like a very iconic, he sounds like he's a blues guy from, you know, the southern states, but he's from like Toronto. When I lived in Newfoundland, I saw these guys like 3-4 times. They used to come to Newfoundland like 3 times a year.
Oh, wow.
I love July Talk. And I kept, the whole movie, I kept being like, man, that really looks like the guy from July Talk. And then when I was looking after, I was like, holy shit, it is that guy. Which I think is funny because, he's got an amazing voice. And it's amazing in this also.
Okay, that's what I was unsure of. I wasn't, because obviously this trio kind of comes and plays their music for some of the bar patrons outside trying to be let inside. And I wasn't sure if we were supposed to be reading that this music is bad, because obviously they say, oh, you know, you guys are actually pretty good, and maybe we let you in here if, you know, situations were different, sort of thing, or maybe if you have enough money on hand, that sort of thing. But I wasn't sure if, as the audience members, we were supposed to be thinking of their music as bad or lesser, because when I was hearing it performed, I was like, well, it's not my sort of music, but it sounds pretty good for what that sort of music usually is. Yeah. I just wasn't sure if that was the intention of the movie or not.
Yeah, and of course, obviously, you know, the Irish steeped in Newfoundland. I just kept being like, oh my God. Are we getting into some Newfoundland jigs here? What's going on?
Yeah, we needed some Great Big Sea. Would have just brought everything together. Vampires, obviously. We've been talking about it. I feel like there were parts that in our spoiler-free discussion now that we wanted to kind of save. How did you feel about when the movie becomes like explicitly a vampire movie? And obviously there is a scene probably within the first hour that involves kind of the Klansmen and the Native Americans showing up on the piece of land and that sort of thing. But I think when the movie fully kind of kicks into gear is when Stack is killed by Haley Steinfeld. And basically she's shot like 6 times and gets up and sprints out of the juke joint from then on out. I guess your reception to that, or like kind of your reaction was, let's fucking go, I assume.
Yeah, well, I did think about you a little bit. Not that when I, you know, watch people banging, I'm thinking about you. But I just thought, I was like, do you think Ryan Coogler has also watched From Dusk Till Dawn as much as you and me, which is, I feel like we you know, oddly never reviewed it on the main show. It's like one of my all-time favorite vampire movies. It's excellent. And there's so much From Dusk Till Dawn in this. Like we said, this wears its influences on the sleeve, and I'm like, you know, this is it. There's like references, and I mean, just like the raw sexuality of this film, I'm like...
Listen, there's at least 3 different discussions in this movie about eating pussy, and I was kind of surprised to see that in the movie, but it is forefront, and obviously...
will love it. He's gonna love this movie.
Absolutely. But it's the sexuality and kind of like this seduction and sexual awakening is at the forefront of this movie. There's multiple sex scenes. The movie is sexy at times.
Oh, yeah.
Haley Steinfeld is supposed to be like a seductress once she's, taken in by the vampires. And I think a lot of people are going to be more into like spitting into each other's mouths from quite a distance away from one another after seeing this movie.
Did you think at first I was like, oh, is this how they like kind of make people vampires or something? I like at first when she asked, I was like, oh, this must be like they can transfer this like blood, like somehow.
Oh, you were thinking that, yeah. For me, I think there was a couple of bites that you could have spotted on some of the other characters.
Well, yeah, I saw that,
point.
but I thought maybe that was a different way, and then I was like, oh no, they just want to spit in each other's mouths.
They're just getting down.
Yeah, they're getting freaky. But yeah, I mean, the vampire stuff in this, I thought worked really well. Obviously, this like classic trope of I can't come into your house until you let me in, and I loved all of it. Scene. I loved all of that, like sending different people to coax, like it just works so well for me.
Cornbread. I got to point out Cornbread because he's the bouncer of the juke joint, played by Omar Benson Miller. And I feel like I saw him in a lot of movies as I was a kid. And then I haven't seen him anything in probably like a decade is what it felt like to me. And when I was watching him in this, I was like, oh man, I've missed you on screen. And also this is such a good kind of supporting role for the movie because he's obviously so integral and so important as being the bouncer of this bar, especially when the trio of vampires originally shows up. But then the fact that he is turned and is kind of the first like big force presence coming trying to get back in the juke
and
joint.
Has like the gnarly gunshot wound.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
it was so good. I love that character, and like once again, we basically love all the characters in this movie. But just when you were talking about the let me in, like having to get permission to come inside, I really liked Cornbread in specifically.
Shout out to 8 Mile. I haven't seen 8 Mile in forever.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, and I mean, it was just a brilliant of how like unsettling and and then they send like the couple that made the sign and stuff, like the husband comes, and
I love that couple too. Like so. Oh, sorry, keep going.
No, I mean, I'm just saying, like it worked so well.
Yeah, so for me, I guess this is where kind of, I don't want to say big issues with the movie, but like the movie does lose me in the last half. Not completely. I still think the movie by and large is really good, great in some respects, but I felt, this is what I thought Ryan Coogler was doing, and maybe it's just, well, I had the wrong expectations, I'm not sure. I thought he was getting us to get to know these characters integrally. So in the last half of the movie, when they're killed off kind of slowly or picked off one by one, it hurts that much more. That basically, like, you're really upset when Delroy Lindo's character dies because, we saw him for the last hour and 45 minutes or 2 hours, right?
Yeah.
But honestly, how it kind of plays out is most of these characters just die in this crazy bloodbath, chaotic nonsense in probably like 5 minutes of the movie near the end. And for me, like as I was watching it, I just felt like it was a disservice to all of the table setting and setting up all these characters leading up to that point, because it is crazy for me, who I'm someone when I watch a movie, oftentimes I don't even really know the names of the characters, but to basically be like, oh yeah, Grace, who is the other Asian American in this movie, but the fact that I know her name and know that she works at a store and has a daughter and, basically all these aspects of her relationship. And I was like, oh, I want a really good death for her, or at least for her to survive. And she does get one, but there's a lot of other characters that kind of are killed off very quickly. And I would almost say unceremoniously in that sequence, where it kind of left me a little bit cold because obviously it was over the top. It was super gory. It was craziness, everything. But he's getting.
Did you also find there's a lot of people? It seemed like a lot of people were dying when I'm pretty sure there was only like 5 or 6 of them. But like they kept showing people like getting eaten by vampires, and I'm like, wait a second, there was only like 6 people in this juke joint.
And this is going to be a bad comparison or a mean comparison, but what it reminded me for, if there's anybody out there who's a Game of Thrones fan, there's a scene near the end of the series called The Long Night, and there's a sequence where essentially the whole series up to this episode has been basically saying, like, when are the White Walkers going to arrive? When are they going to fight all of our heroes? And who's going to make it out alive? And that's the big point of the episode, and even the series. And it kind of culminates in something that's very quickly, it's over, like, basically when you blink your eyes, and it has so many cutaways of people getting eaten and killed and whatnot that it's kind of like you don't really spend enough time with these characters that you, in Game of Thrones case, that you spent 7 or 8 seasons with, that it feels just like a disservice to the characters you built up. And the fact that Ryan Coogler had me caring so much about these characters in a 2-hour kind of lead up to this scene is incredible. But it was something that really just kind of sat wrong with me, that I understand getting kind of this catharsis, this like explosion of gore and action, and like how it could be a fun sequence. But for me, I just genuinely cared so much about the characters that I wanted them all to kind of get like their key moment. Yeah. And, Grace does get her very quick moment of rushing out to, stake her husband while she's on fire, of course. Or the witch doctor lady, Beatrice, I think her name is. She gets a quick moment of like, obviously, Smoke having to like put her down. But it's just, I thought they were all so quick that I was just left a little bit cold, I think, with that sequence.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Like, you would like to see them kind of, a little more emotional, stuff like that. And then some of me is like, I don't know, vampires are killing is probably going to be pretty quick in this Royal Rumble battle. They're like, fuck yeah.
Well, I think that's the fact that it wound up being a Royal Rumble battle rather than, just getting picked off a little bit more selectively or a little bit more cleverly. Like, essentially, the whole movie kind of boils down to Grace just shouting at them, saying, come on in, I'm going to kill y'all, or we're going to take you down with us, sort of thing.
Grace just fucked them all. Like,
yeah, exactly. But it felt like, to me, it was just like, okay, the movie has been going on for 2 hours. We need to wrap this up. Let's just have it all. Everyone's going to fight at once. It's going to be a wrestling match. And, most people are just going to die very quickly and unceremoniously.
I was going to say, another scene I really liked was obviously the homage to The Thing, where, they're doing eating the garlic to see
we're in lockstep.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to pivot to. I was going to say, although the scene earlier where they go around the circle and they all eat the garlic, I thought was done really well. And these are the scenes where the horror is kind of creeping in that I thought worked. Yeah. Right? Like this is still very character-driven horror where essentially I was thinking, oh, there is a chance that Delroy Lindo's character could be a vampire. Like there is a chance. He was on the door. We weren't with him that entire time. So I liked kind of leaning into the fact that his character he was too drunk and he was throwing up. And then right before him, you get the character that Sammy was sleeping with, Perline, that she was basically reluctant and wouldn't eat the garlic at all. And I was kind of wondering, oh God, is there something there as well? Because, she was seducing him. And, there was all these aspects that I in that scene, I just thought it was like masterfully done in terms of tension and very similar to obviously The Thing, as you said. But like those are the moments of horror that work better for me rather than it being like an all out action kind of bloodbath, I guess. But, speaking to that later point, what do you think about like how this sequence culminated? We have Remick fighting Sammy out in the water, and they're tussling, and the sun's coming up, and some people are getting caught on fire. Remick is he's turning almost like Nosferatu, like with really long claws and whatnot, and longer teeth, and his ears are all weird. He gets the piece of the guitar wedged in his head. It's silver. What do you feel about that sequence? Did you like it?
I kind of liked it, man. Like,
okay.
To me, like, do I think it was like the best looking thing I've ever seen? No, like that kind of stuff. But
did you question where Smoke came from with a
little bit
with the stake? How did he get through 30 vampires and get to this guy?
A little bit, but I was just like, Coogler's like, at this point, I'm like, he's having a time, man. Like he's got to be living like childhood fantasies of creating a vampire horror movie. And I thought him turning into, like you said, this Nosferatu type character was giving me a little Blade, when Frost turns into the like bean or whatever, and they hit him with the blood stuff that he starts like expanding and exploding. Obviously that looks way worse than this, but I thought it was like a fun little moment, a fun time with it, and I like where it led. I'm sure we're going to talk about the mid credits and that kind of stuff.
Yes.
We
have a couple of other scenes we got to touch on that actually end the movie, but absolutely we'll get to the credit stuff for sure.
I like where that led, because at this point we're to believe, like any vampire movie, like, you kill the leader, You kind of kill everybody, and we see, like, when he gets hit in the head, everybody else is, like, holding their head like they got hit in the head, and they're screaming, so you're like, oh, okay, yeah, like, these guys feel Remic's pain, so, yeah, we kill him, we're good.
We might as well just discuss some details here. So this scene, for me, logically winds up not making a whole lot of sense in retrospect, because it's like, okay, Haley Steinfeld, how did she survive this? Why didn't she get the pain in her head? Stack, how did he survive this? And then I'm like, okay, well, maybe Haley turned Stack, so you got to kill her in order for him to die. But then who turned Haley Steinfeld? And whoever it was probably dead in this ending sequence, right? So it just winds up creating a couple of little, they're stupid issues, because obviously it's only revealed that they're alive in the mid-credit scene. But for me, I was like, how did you guys actually survive this ending? We'll get into the mid-credit scene in a moment, but that was it was a little bit confusing to me in retrospect. The Klan shootout. Leading up to this movie, I discussed in the spoiler-free section, we see Michael B. Jordan with the Tommy gun. It's kind of like this iconic moment that's ending the trailer. And honestly, I thought we weren't going to get it from the movie. I got right up to the end. I was like, well, all the vampires are dead. They must have cut this movie out. They must have, like, there must be a couple of scenes that they just moved on from that it didn't fit in the final cut. And I was so disappointed leading into this final scene. Klan shootout. I understand it's cathartic. I understand that it's like two sides of the same coin, like, we're combating evil on this side, we're combating evil on this side. How'd you feel about it? Was it needed? Was the movie's already pretty long at this point. What'd you think of this scene? Because I feel bad coming out and saying, like, I don't know if I really needed the Klan shootout at the end of this movie, but it was just kind of like, we just got this crazy, cathartic, over-the-top action scene to then basically get another one to end the movie.
Why not double it, man? I'm always for some Klan shootouts, and I think it leads to what I actually like. Like, I actually like the fact that what he views as his partners, like mumbo jumbo, like actually, he sees as his kid that we established earlier in the movie is past, and that his time's coming, he sees them, and like I kind of like that. It gave me hardcore Wakanda Forever vibes.
Absolutely. So I like that detail, but he could have just been mortally wounded in the last fight.
Every movie needs some Klan member shot up, and what? When I got the shot of him screaming with the Tommy gun, I was still like, let's fucking go. I was like, this
absolutely.
Shot is amazing. 2.5 hours. They could just have the camera. He could just yell and shoot a Tommy gun for 2.5 hours. I would have been happy.
And then actually the final last scene of the movie, the clutching the guitar and driving off. So basically what we didn't touch on is this whole movie is kind of a frame narrative of basically Sammy going to his father's church. And we get a couple of really kind of out of nowhere jump scares as he's entering this, which I think really sets the tone for the movie, that eventually there's going to be some horror bleeding into this sort of space. And I like that. But we get the payoff of kind of like driving off with this dismantled, broken guitar, and basically anywhere but here. He's driving off to piece his life back together elsewhere. And basically that if you are creative and, if you're going to pursue this, you don't really care. You're going to go to some place where you don't have to suppress your artistic, expression. And I thought that specifically was a very good ending to kind of like what we just watched. Like I said, those more of like a little bit more down to earth horrors work just a little bit better to me than, a flying vampire or whatnot.
Yeah. Well, and I think it was a great culmination of what really, we kind of get hammered with, as these brothers are telling Sammy Boy over and over again throughout the whole film, and everyone he kind of comes into, right, is that, like, if you're really serious about, like, basically, I'm sure Coogler looks at this as, like, if you're serious about anything in the arts, it's like you have to be willing to sacrifice and go 100% all the way. And, I'm sure maybe even some underlying, I kind of picked up underlying even like darker themes of, like obviously a hot topic for the last couple of years is, like the underbelly of Hollywood and the evil of it. So I definitely felt, Coogler talking through this being like, you're gonna deal with real vampires and real monsters if you're
bloodsuckers.
Yeah, gonna deal with the arts, and you've got to be willing to, come out with giant scars all over you to come through to the other side.
And then what I think probably nobody was really expecting going into this movie. Maybe we should have expected it considering his last couple movies were Marvel movies, but we get a mid-credit scene and an end credit scene or an after credit scene. Now, I missed out on the after credit scene, so you'll have to fill me in there in a moment. I read up on what it entailed. But we get a flash forward to the 90s that we hinted at when we were discussing about kind of like the ending of the vampires in this movie. How'd you feel about this scene of basically Smoke surviving, Stack surviving, Mary surviving, and them coming into kind of this bar? We see Sammy, he has made it, he is making money as like a musician. Seems like the crowd is very electric, they're there.
And it's his bar, yeah.
Yeah, and it's Perline, so it was named after, obviously, his love of that day. What do you think of this ending? It was kind of funky seeing them wear like the 90s aesthetic. I thought that was interesting.
Stack had like the gold ring that said Stack. I was like, that's tough. He had like the Coogler sweater, and Haley kind of dressed up as like a typical like 90s white hip hop girl. I liked it. I thought it was kind of a cool, like you said, very MCU, very like, hey, if you guys go see this movie, maybe I can make Sinners too, and we can just keep going. Beforehand, like, because we get to see Sammy basically play a whole song through the credits, and I will shout out Christone Ingram, who also goes by Kingfish, is like the bigger guy playing guitar, who's like probably one of the most famous kind of younger blues guys. He's only like 26. I remember him. He was in the Luke Cage show that Netflix did, but he's basically like blues wise he was like basically considered a prodigy, where like at like 17, 18 he was playing with like BB King and stuff. Like he's like this blues legend already at 26. And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool to like see that they involved him in this as well. But yeah, like I said, I mean, I thought the mid-credit scene was fun. Like, even if you're not going to do a sequel, it's like a cool little wink to say, the vampires are still here. They're still rocking. And, even when Sammy's dead and gone, they're going to be there, doing their thing. Did you like it? Like, were you like...
Yeah, I like the mid-credit scene. I thought it was a little bit cheeky.
Yeah.
Especially since we just had such a good kind of coda to this movie, like the ending of Sammy driving off. But I was sticking around anyways because there's still a little bit of, snippets of the actual performance on screen. I at least wanted to hear that final song. So I was there. A lot of my audience was filtering out at this point. I guess, people aren't expecting mid-credits and after-credit scenes. I even left before the after-credit scene, so you'll have to fill me in on that now.
Yeah, I mean, the after-credit, I enjoyed it. I don't think, do you need to stay that whole time? Like, probably not.
It's not quite as crucial, I would assume, to kind of have the movie
basically, we get Sammy Boy playing the guitar in the church. It looks like it's probably before all of this happened. The guitar is still intact, all that kind of stuff.
Okay, so it's when he's younger. Gotcha.
And it's basically just him singing This Little Light of Mine, and it just kind of ends in this... which I thought was interesting. I don't really know Coogler's background and stuff, but I mean, obviously with most vampire movies, there's like this sense of Christianity like brought into it. So having the actual film and the legit film or whatever they're playing it on their MP whatever their format the theaters are playing it in, to have it end in like kind of this like iconic, like Christian song from the church that everyone would kind of know. And I mean, obviously, like we said, that guy kills it. I'm very curious. I didn't look before we recorded. Like, I'm curious if he actually sung all the stuff, or if he was like it was
Oh, he
someone
must
else.
have.
It sounds like his voice. So
yeah, I don't think there's any way you'd cast like an unknown to play this role if you were also going to have to do all that ADR and all that replacement to get someone to sing through them. I would say that's his voice.
I will say, kind of my last note, I was curious, do you find it hard, the scene where they're at the train station and they say to Sammy Boy, they're like, oh, like, you know, he's only this age. How does he know the blues? And all I could think about was Walk Hard when they have that scene and they're like, he's just a little boy. What does he know about the blues? I was just like,
yeah, anything that touches on, anything that touches on a musical biopic nowadays, you know, we have to think about Walk Hard. Very last thing that it's been on my head the entire time, but I was wondering like when I should put this in, just because it's a little bit of a downer in a certain regard. Rumors of this movie when it was coming out was apparently Michael B. Jordan was going to play one brother, Jonathan Majors was going to play the other brother. Do you think that would have been an interesting choice? Obviously, Jonathan Majors, terrible dude nowadays. Yeah, obviously, he kind of killed his career. He's a woman beater. You know, terrible dude. Do you think like seeing him as probably, I would assume, Smoke, as kind of, you know, the more violent soldier brother in the movie, would have you think that would have made for like an interesting watch as well? Or are you fine with the two Michael B. Jordans?
I mean, I didn't mind the Michael B. Jordan thing. I thought, like I said, I thought he did a pretty good job at it. I mean, I can't lie to the listeners, right? Like, I feel like Jonathan Majors would have murdered this. Like, their chemistry in Creed 3 is so good. Mm-hmm. Like, it's so palpable. And I think, especially like in Creed 3, as, you know, best friends growing up since they're children, like they had that kind of big brother relationship where I'm like, if this was in Sinners, like I think that would have been really, really good.
Yeah, I think so as well. And it was the sort of thing that I knew about that going in. So maybe that tinged my perception of Michael B. Jordan a little bit, or I was like, oh, I would have liked to see that movie. The movie's still very good regardless, but it was just one little thing I had to twist the knife at the end that I just had to bring up. And if you're new to the podcast, our review rubric is nay, okay, yay, or slay. So Rowan, what would you give Sinners?
Well, you know what? I kind of think that, you know, I was curious this whole podcast because I was like, maybe Colton's my identical twin because he seems to know me so well. Yeah, I think I'm going to give it a slay, man. Like
I knew it.
I had so much like fun with this, and it's kind of like I'm still trying to decide if that's weird because we talk about all the like really serious things and themes going on in this, but like it is fun. Like, you know, Coogler made sure, like I said, that you can watch this as just a vampire movie if you don't want to explore any themes, and I think it's a good time. I know you said maybe the last half, the horror half, didn't work as good as the front end. Yeah. I was very much like, I enjoyed the front end so much that I was like, oh, like I could have a movie of just this. But I also enjoyed the vampire stuff. And I think this is probably the best vampire stuff we've gotten in a long time. Like, I was trying to think of like newer vampire movies that we've done.
Nosferatu just came out.
Well, not pretty good as Nosferatu. Well, I was thinking more, you know, like, what was it, Abigail and
oh, okay, yeah,
the absolute slapper, The Invitation. Yeah, I was thinking about all those great ones. So I was like, you know, this is a little better than The Invitation. And like I said, I appreciated all the nods, other horror movies I didn't bring up. I felt a lot of John Carpenter's vampires in this, from the score to some of the shots, and especially in the first half, obviously. You know, John Carpenter's vampires is like set in the desert. You know, it's James Wood, a very different movie. It's James Wood. It's just a bunch of white people. But it just had this, you know, I don't know what I want to call a hot feeling. You know, hot south, hot deserts.
I've also heard a lot of people comparing this to Demon Knight as well, which we did on the podcast. And the thing is, it's been a couple of years since I've seen that now, so I'm not as familiar with it.
Another slay, another banger, another.
Well, exactly.
I think I only
just had
gave
to throw
it a
it out there.
but it's a slay in my heart, I feel. I mean, Demon Knight, I love Demon Knight, and I can't see that because yes, another very like group in a house. We're trying to come in. I don't know if Jack O'Connell gave, you know, that probably the best Billy Zane performance Billy Zane ever did. But yeah, a lot of influence in that. And yeah, I mean, I just, this is Slay. Like I said, I'm already trying to like look at my schedule and be like, when can I go see this again? I need to see this in IMAX. Everyone I talk to, I'm going to be like, you got to go see this movie. So it's a Slay for me. What about you, Colton?
Yeah, so I feel bad because I do think this movie, like literally for an hour and 15 minutes, I think is essentially perfect. I really, really like the first hour and 15 minutes. Then we introduce horror, or a little bit more horror, and I think it's kind of still pretty good for probably another half hour or so. There's a little bit of gore with some people getting picked off, or, you know, like the wound on Cornbread's face, or some of the tension with the garlic scene, or if we're going to let him out of the room, that sort of thing. But I can't lie where the last kind of 20 minutes to 30 minutes really kind of took the wind out of my sails, where lots of times these sorts of movies, if they culminate in this huge fight or this huge bloodbath, I mean, it's probably not going to be immediately something that I love anyways. It's always comes off as a little bit cheesy or a little bit hokey, or at least, you know, you're like cheering at it, but it's kind of like, to me, it's not as quite as, you know, insular or kind of introspective as some of the other parts of the movie. So it just, to me, it kind of feels like a movie of, like, almost like two separate movies in some respects. Obviously, there's a lot of mishmash and a lot of kind of going back and forth and trying to make the tone work. It's just, I don't think the tone in the latter half specifically worked as well for me in the former, even though in that last half, there's still a couple of scenes I really like. So I'm going to settle on a yay. It's the sort of thing where I don't even know specifically what I'm going to give it on Letterboxd yet, because there's so many parts of it that are so excellent, but there's also just some things that I just didn't like. Like, for example, the orangish blood it's very orange in that third act. When you watch it, you'll see it on a rewatch. It was kind of weird to me where it felt like almost like a cheesy 80s movie, which is very much not what the first hour is. I didn't like some of the eyes and some of the effects there, or some of the wire work that's pretty, you know, it's not really in there, but it was just the sort of thing where it was pulling me out of kind of this world he created in the first hour. And yeah, I just was hoping that some of these characters would have got a little bit more time to shine by the end of it, which is a testament to his writing and to his casting and their performances. And obviously they're all very good things. It's just kind of where these characters wound up. I don't know if we really even needed, in retrospect, the hour and 15 minutes to get to know them, because they are killed so quickly. It was just, I was expecting to really get a lot more meat with them near the end of the movie, which just left me a little disappointed. So yeah, it's going to be a yay from me. And if you're new to the show and you're not following us already, you can do so at It Slays Podcast. We're on Instagram, Facebook, Slasher, Letterboxd, Threads, Bluesky. You can follow us anywhere at It Slays Podcast. And if you want to help support the show financially, like our horror hounds Holly, Nicholas, Mark, Steven, Dan, Brian, Trevor, and James, gain access to the Patreon exclusive show Stream Screams and get episodes of the main show 48 hours early, be sure to head on over to patreon.com/itslayspodcast and choose whatever tier works best for you. Rowan, you got to find something here to put on the playlist. I don't know if the original score is out there yet. I don't know if they're breaking out the songs one by one that are performed, but something from Sinners.
I'm sure it'll show up, and I will definitely make sure something gets up there from this. And you can find out if it does by going to the It Slays Podcast horrific playlist on Spotify. If you have any problems finding it, you can go to any of the social media that Colton just mentioned. Go in the bio, click the Linktree link. It will take you directly there. We upload scores or licensed music from iconic horror movies we review, or just horror movies we love. So follow it and get your spooky music on, because why the hell not?
And next time on the show, I think what's coming up and makes the most sense for us to cover is Until Dawn. That comes out next week.
Get ready for my heart to be broken, I'm sure.
Yeah, we'll have lots to say on that episode for sure. And with that, I think that about wraps things up for this episode. So until next time, I'm Colton.
I'm Rowan.
And as long as you keep listening, we'll keep slaying.